In the beginning, God created the oceans and the land. He then put a dome over them and called that sky. He then created the... You really want me to call them vegetables? No, I'll call them plants. After, he created the sun and the moon since he was too lazy to change the time of day himself. Next, he created the fish, then the animals. He then made humans. Put them on the planet. Thank you.
To create these humans, God took clay and molded them. Then he breathed life into them and made them in his image. But he saw that they were lonely, so he took their rib and he made a woman.
God promised Abraham 3 things in compensation for his people's praise. 1 was a promised land. But right now he's being a bit difficult. Stay off my property! I'll leave him be. 2nd was descendants as numerous as the stars. As numerous as this? Not possible. I wouldn't question it if I were you. Let me speak! And last, he said that doing this would redeem humanity.
Let us view the tree of knowledge. How an evil snake may have been purple. Eve came along, and the snake told Eve to eat a fruit of knowledge. Eve took it and ate it. She shared it with Adam. They realized that they were naked, so they clothed themselves. But God found out that they had eaten the fruit, and he cast them out from Eden. This is the start of sin. Many years later, Adam and Eve's sons, Cain and Abel, were in extreme opposition. They had a sacrifice to God, and God liked Abel's sacrifice more. Cain killed Abel. This was the second sin of man.
After a little bit of time, Abraham's people became hungry in a famine. They looked for a place to find food, but all they could see was Egypt, and that came with a price. They exchanged their freedom for food. They thought it was all right, they thought it was a good deal, but they're just being pretty stupid. But one day, this lady had a baby. She didn't want the baby to be a slave, so she cast it into the river. And then the princess of Egypt found this baby and took it back to her home. Now, this baby was named Moses. Moses grew up, and he saw what the Egyptians were doing. It wasn't cool, and then he learned that those were his people. So naturally, he just stabbed some guy and ran away. But while he was in exile, he heard a bush trying to talk to him, and it told him that he had to free his people. So he went back to Pharaoh, and he asked him to let his people go. Pharaoh didn't listen, so he turned his staff into a snake to show God's power. He sent frogs, turned his river into blood, made everything dark, all trying to get Pharaoh to listen. And he sent even more. Finally, he had to settle for the angel of death, killing all the firstborns. After that, they had to run away. So Moses went and split the Red Sea in half, getting all of the Israelites out of Egypt and to safety. On the other side, God gave Moses the 10 Commandments. After the Israelites were free, Israel and the Promised Land went into disarray. They were led by judges such as Samson here. Yeah, you go, Samson, go kill some Philistines. But these judges, they led them for a good time, but they didn't provide solid leadership. Then came the kings.
This is King Solomon, and when he saw his first temple, he knew he was going to make one that split Israel itself apart.
King Solomon has died. His son Rehoboam inherited the kingdom, but most viewed him as a tyrant. Jeroboam, his brother, opposed his rule. Jeroboam had the support of 10 of the tribes, so they split the kingdom of Israel and Judah, with Jeroboam ruling Israel, and Rehoboam ruled Judah with the tribes of Judah and Benjamin. Many years later, as the power of each nation waned, Assyria took over Israel. Judah was devoured by Babylon, which had also taken Assyria and Israel. The residents of Israel and Judah were now ruled by Nebuchadnezzar, who was evil to them. He despised Israel and Judah, and he sacked Jerusalem. All were sad and hopeless. But there was still Jeremiah, who was a prophet, promised them that they would be saved as long as they followed the rules. He prophesied the Messiah. Eventually the Israelites and Judeans were freed from Babylon, and then they waited for the promised Messiah to protect them.
To find out what happens next, come back next week on Total Wrong one, hang on. See the full motion picture in theaters on January 30th, 2019.